Hi, in this video we're going to look at something called arrays in VB6 and why they are useful, and we'll have a look at our encoder application. So if I just run this one, the idea is that we put in 4 numbers, we click on encode, and it should bring out a different set of 4 numbers because the programming code will do something to each of the digits. We'll have a look at that in a moment. But if we click on encode, we see we get 4 different digits out. So our 1, 2, 3, 4 becomes encoded as 4664. And the code takes the value that's put into the text box, puts it into a variable, and then uses the mid function, which we looked at in a previous video, to strip out each individual digit. And then in this example, it puts each individual digit into its own variable, which are all declared up here. It then performs some multiplication on each variable, so we can see that the first one is times by 4, the second one is times by 3, and so on, and then outputs that all in a message box, and we get our encoded value. Now we can use something called arrays instead of declaring 4 different variables. So let's look at an example that uses arrays. And here's my example that uses arrays. Instead of declaring 4 different variables, we declare one variable. And you'll notice the difference is that when we declare this variable, we put in brackets the number of times we want to use that variable, basically. But minus 1. We want to use it 4 times, but we'll put 3 because you'll see when we start to use it here, it starts off with a base of 0, like lots of things in computing do. So we've got 4 separate variables, but actually it only goes up to number 3 because we start at 0. So that's why it's got a 3 in there. And that's good because we've only got to declare one variable up here, our array. But we can store 4 different values in it, so the rest of the code works the same after that. Where arrays really come in to their own and are really useful is where you might start to use something called loops, which we'll look at in more detail in a future video. But I've commented out the code used in the example that we've just looked at, the second example, and I've replaced it with a loop. So we can see it's a lot less amount of coding for the same result. And if you could imagine that if our array wasn't 3, if it was 30 or 300 or 3000 or 30,000 different values that we wanted to store, then it would still just be the same amount of code down here, and would avoid this sort of wallpaper code, because our loop is a really efficient way of programming and just allows you to work with arrays in a really efficient manner, and avoids repetitive code like we've got up here. So we'll look at loops more in a future video, but that's how you declare an array. That's how you declare an array variable, and it can be any data type, and this is how you refer to it in your code. So that's the first element of the array, that's the second element of the array, and so on and so forth.